I stood in the executive hallway holding yellow tulips from my grandmother's birthday lunch when Derek Hamilton intercepted me. Our brand new CEO, on his literal first day. He fired me right there, in front of gathering colleagues, with cold efficiency and a smirk. Security was already on the way. I had 1 hour to pack 12 years of my life into boxes. I looked at him, then at the tulips, still shaking slightly in my hands. I smiled softly and said only 2 words, "Good luck." Let me back up 2 weeks so you understand how I got to that moment. Standing in a hallway holding flowers while being publicly humiliated. My name is Gabriela Martinez, and I had spent 12 years at Hartwell Solutions, a mid-sized software consulting firm in Denver. I started fresh out of college as a junior analyst, barely knowing how to navigate office politics or client relationships. I was 23 years old, eager, terrified, and absolutely determined to prove myself. The company's founder, Martin Hartwell, took me under his wing early on. After my father passed away from a heart attack when I was 26, Martin became more than just a boss. He was a mentor, a father figure, someone who believed in me when I struggled to believe in myself. He taught me everything about the business, about integrity, about building something that mattered beyond quarterly profits. I worked my way up slowly, but steadily. Junior analyst to senior analyst, then project manager, then director of client relations. Finally, 5 years ago, I became vice president of client relations. I managed our relationships with 37 major clients, representing about 75% of our revenue. I knew every account intimately. I knew the birthdays of our clients' kids. I knew which ones preferred morning meetings and which ones hated phone calls. Martin was 72 now, and he had been planning his retirement for months. The board of directors decided the company needed fresh leadership, someone who could take us into the next decade. They hired an external CEO through a prestigious executive search firm. Martin seemed supportive of the decision, though I noticed he seemed quieter than usual in those final weeks. I was nervous about the change, honestly. Change always makes me nervous, but I trusted Martin's judgment. And I assumed the board knew what they were doing. Then came that Sunday afternoon, 3 days before everything exploded. Martin called me to his home office. I drove to his beautiful craftsman house in the Wash Park neighborhood, the one he had lived in for 40 years. His wife had passed away 3 years earlier, and the house felt both warm and lonely at the same time, filled with photographs and memories. He sat me down in his study, surrounded by books and old company photos, and said something that stopped my heart. "Gabriela, I'm selling my controlling stake in the company, but not to the board, not to investors. I'm selling it to you." I stared at him, certain I had misheard. "Martin, I don't have that kind of money. I could never afford." He held up his hand. "I've structured it as a long-term payment plan. 15 years. Terms so favorable you could manage it on your current salary. I've been working with attorneys for a year to make this happen." I felt tears forming. "Why me?" "Because you embody everything this company is supposed to be. Because I trust you to protect our employees, our culture, our values. Because in 12 years, I've never seen you take a shortcut or compromise your integrity. Not once." He leaned forward, his eyes serious. "The board doesn't know. They think I'm just retiring and keeping my shares. But I want you to own this company, Gabriela. I want you to protect it." We spent 3 hours going over the details. Martin owned 60% of the company. The board members collectively owned 35%. Split among 10 people. Martin would keep 12% for his retirement income. He was selling me 53%, making me the majority shareholder. The paperwork would be filed with the state, but there was a standard 1-week processing period before it became public record. He assured me everything was legal, proper, and ironclad. Then he said something that made my stomach turn. "The new CEO, Derek Hamilton, comes from a corporate raider background. The board thinks hell modernize us, bring in new strategies. But I've done some quiet research, and I don't like what I found. Watch him carefully, Gabriella. Very carefully. 2 days later, on a Tuesday afternoon, I met Martin at a private law office downtown. 3 attorneys were present. I signed document after document until my hand cramped. Property transfer agreements, promissory notes, corporate governance filings. Each signature felt surreal, like I was signing away my old life and stepping into something I couldn't fully comprehend. When we finished, Martin shook my hand formally, then pulled me into a hug. The paperwork will be processed and filed publicly in 1 week. Until then, this stays between us, my attorneys, and you. Derek starts tomorrow. Watch him. I drove home in a daze. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the responsibility I had just accepted. 53% owner of a company with 215 employees, their families depending on our success. It felt enormous and terrifying and somehow right. The next morning, Derek Hamilton arrived for his orientation meetings. I sat in on the executive introduction in the main conference room. Derek was 45 years old, perfectly polished in an expensive suit, with silver hair and calculating eyes. He spoke eloquently about efficiency, cutting fat, maximizing shareholder value, disrupting outdated models. The board members nodded approvingly. Some of my fellow executives looked excited. I felt a cold knot forming in my stomach. When it was my turn to introduce myself and my department, Derek barely looked at me. He gave me a brief nod, then moved on quickly. It felt deliberate, dismissive. That evening, I told myself I was being paranoid. I tried to sleep but couldn't shake the unease. The next morning, Derek's first official day as CEO, I arrived at the office at 7:30. I liked getting in early, before the rush, when I could organize my thoughts and plan my day. I opened my email and froze. There was a message accidentally CC'd to me. Derek had sent it late the night before to 3 board members: Andrew Chen, Donald Westfield, and Barbara Preston. The subject line read, Phase 1 Terminations. My name was at the top of a list of 15 people. I read the email 3 times, my hands shaking. Derek laid out his plan in cold, clinical detail. He intended to remove what he called legacy employees with outdated loyalties. He wanted to bring in his own team, people who would be loyal to him personally. He wrote about breaking the old culture and establishing new norms through decisive action. There was a line that burned itself into my brain. Gabriela Martinez is particularly problematic. Long tenure, close relationship with Hartwell, respected by staff. She needs to go first, and publicly, to establish that no one is untouchable. I printed the email with shaking hands and put it in my bag. I sat at my desk, trying to process what I had just read. This man was planning to gut the company Martin had spent 40 years building. He was planning to destroy careers, families, lives. And he was starting with me. I looked at my calendar. My grandmother's 80th birthday lunch was scheduled for 11. I had promised her weeks ago I would be there. I decided I needed those 2 hours away from the office to clear my head and figure out what to do. I went to the lunch. I hugged my grandmother. I listened to her stories and laughed at her jokes and tried to pretend everything was normal. On my way back to the office, I stopped at a flower shop and bought her a bouquet of yellow tulips, her favorite. When I walked back into the Hartwell Solutions building at 1:15 that afternoon, carrying those tulips, Derek Hamilton was waiting for me in the executive hallway, and that's when he fired me. Derek didn't pull me aside to an office. He didn't ask me to sit down for a private conversation. He did it right there in the hallway, outside my office, deliberately loud. Gabriela Martinez. His voice carried down the corridor. I need to speak with you. People started appearing in doorways. My assistant, Jenny, the marketing director, Trevor. my close friend Amy Brennan from the development team. They sensed something was wrong. "I'm terminating your employment effective immediately," Derek said, his voice cold and formal. "You've been underperforming for months, and your resistance to necessary changes makes you a liability. Security will escort you to your office. You have 1 hour to collect your personal belongings." I stood there holding those yellow tulips, feeling everyone's eyes on me. Trevor looked shocked. Amy's hand went to her mouth. Jenny started to say something. But Derek's assistant, a woman named Crystal who had come with him from his previous company, stepped forward and silenced her with a look. "This is effective immediately," Derek repeated. He seemed to be enjoying this, making a show of it. "Human Resources has prepared your severance package. It's quite generous considering your performance issues." That's when I felt something shift inside me. I could have argued. I could have shouted. I could have demanded explanations or threatened lawsuits. But I thought about that email in my bag. I thought about the paperwork I had signed 2 days earlier. I thought about Martin's warning to watch Derek carefully. I looked directly at Derek Hamilton and smiled. A small, soft smile. "Good luck," I said. His eyebrows went up slightly. He had expected anger, maybe tears. My calm response clearly unsettled him for just a moment, before his smirk returned. 2 security guards appeared. I recognized them both. Frank and David, good men who had worked here for years. They looked miserable as they flanked me. "Let's get your things," Frank said quietly, apologetically. We walked to my office. Through the windows, I could see people watching. Some looked away when I made eye contact, already afraid for their own jobs. Others stared with a mixture of sympathy and shock. Amy slipped into my office while I was packing. She was crying. "This is insane," she whispered. "You've done nothing wrong. Everyone knows it." I put a hand on her arm. "It's going to be okay. Trust me." "How can you be so calm?" "Because I have to be." I couldn't tell her why. Not yet. "Just trust me, Amy, and take care of yourself." I had 12 years of my life in this office. Photos on the walls, awards and certificates. A plant Trevor had given me when I got promoted to VP. Books about client management and leadership. A coffee mug my team had gifted me that said "World's Best Boss," which always made me laugh because I wasn't really their boss, just their colleague. I packed it all into 3 cardboard boxes, while Frank and David waited by the door. Crystal appeared with a manila envelope. She handed it to me without a word, that smirk still on her face. I opened it briefly. The severance package was insulting. 8 weeks of pay for 12 years of service. The bare legal minimum. Derek appeared in my doorway as I finished packing. "Maybe this will teach you that loyalty doesn't pay the bills," he said loudly, performing for the audience, still watching from the hallway. "Results do. Performance matters. Sentiment doesn't." I picked up my boxes. Frank took 2 of them from me, leaving me carrying just 1 along with my purse and the tulips. We walked through the entire office toward the exit. It was clearly choreographed, meant to intimidate everyone who remained. I passed Jenny, who was crying quietly at her desk. I passed Trevor, who looked furious but helpless. I passed Marcus from finance, who mouthed "I'm sorry" as I walked by. In the lobby, Patricia, our elderly receptionist who had worked here for 20 years, watched with tears streaming down her face. As I passed her desk, she quickly pressed something into my hand, a folded piece of paper. I made it to my car before I opened it. The note, written in Patricia's neat handwriting, said, "Has firing 12 more people today. Has already interviewed replacements. They're downstairs in conference room B." I heard him on the phone. "Has planning to sell the company's client list to a competitor within 6 months and dissolve us. I'm so sorry. Gabriella, I'm so sorry. Patricia." I sat in my car in the parking garage and let myself shake, not from fear, from rage. This wasn't about modernizing the company or improving performance. This was about destruction. Derek Hamilton was planning to systematically dismantle everything Martin had built, sell off the valuable pieces, and walk away rich while 215 people lost their jobs. My phone rang. "Martin, I just heard," he said, his voice tight with anger. "Gabriella, I'm going to call him right now and tell him who you are. This is outrageous." "No." My voice was stronger than I felt. "Don't do anything yet. Let him think he's won. I need you to trust me, Martin." There was a long silence. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking I have 6 days until my ownership becomes public record. I'm thinking I need to stay quiet and let him show me exactly what he's planning. I'm thinking the more rope we give him, the more hell hang himself." Another silence. Then Martin said, "I taught you well. But Gabriella, I just got a call from Andrew Chen. Derek told the board you were fired for embezzlement." My hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Hez lying. I know that. But Hez spreading it to poison your reputation. If you fight back later, he wants people to doubt you." After we hung up, I sat in my car for 20 more minutes, thinking, Derek wasn't just destroying the company. He was trying to destroy me personally, to make sure I couldn't fight back or be believed if I tried. But he didn't know what I knew. He didn't know who I was now. He thought he had eliminated his biggest threat. He had no idea he had just made his fatal mistake. I spent the rest of that day working from my apartment, trying to figure out my next move. The shock was starting to wear off, replaced by cold, calculated anger. At 4 p.m, my phone rang. It was Marcus, our chief financial officer, or rather, our former CFO. "Gabriella, I just got fired," he said without preamble. "Can we meet?" We met at a quiet coffee shop in Capitol Hill, away from the office and anyone who might recognize us. Marcus looked exhausted. He had been with the company for 10 years, had a wife and 3 kids, a mortgage, and now no job. "I'm sorry," I said. "Don't be. I saw it coming." He pulled out a folder. "Gabriella, I need to show you something." 3 weeks ago, before Derek officially started, I saw him having dinner at Rioja with 3 of our board members, Andrew Chen, Donald Westfield, and Barbara Preston. Maybe it was just a welcome dinner, that's what I thought. But I was at the bar, and they didn't see me. I heard them celebrating something. They were talking about a transition windfall and timeline acceleration. He slid the folder across the table. I started digging. Quietly. I made copies of some financial documents before Derek locked me out of the system today. I opened the folder. Inside were printouts of Derek's employment contract and some related agreements. "Look at page 7, Marcus said. I found it. There was a bonus structure that made me feel sick. If the company was sold within 1 year of Derek's start date, he would personally receive $8 million. $8 million. Now, look at the attachment, Marcus continued. I found a secondary agreement. Andrew, Donald, and Barbara had a side deal to split $12 million if a sale occurred within the same time frame. They're planning to tank the company and sell it, Marcus said quietly. I kept digging last week. Derek has a buyer already lined up, Titan Acquisitions. They're a corporate liquidation firm. They strip assets and dissolve companies. I stared at the documents. Pieces clicking into place. Derek's done this before. I checked. 3 times in the last 8 years. He gets hired as CEO, guts the company within 6 months, facilitates a sale to liquidators, walks away with millions. The company's all mysteriously collapsed right after he left. We sat in silence for a moment. There's more, Marcus said. Hez building a case against you. I saw Crystal copying files from your computer this morning after you left. My phone buzzed. It was Amy. I have to take this, I told Marcus. Gabriella. Amy's voice was barely a whisper. I'm in the bathroom. I can't talk long. Derek just met with Hanover Financial. He told them you were fired for fraud. They're pulling their contract. That's 40% of our revenue. Hanover Financial was our biggest client. I had built that relationship over 8 years. Their CEO, Patricia Hanover, had become a personal friend, and Gabriella. Amy continued, her voice shaking. He's forcing all department heads to sign NDAs and non-compete agreements. If anyone speaks out about anything, they lose their severance and get sued for breach. People are terrified. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. Hez in your office right now. He and Crystal are going through everything. She's got a laptop and she's copying files. After I hung up, I shared this with Marcus. Hez building evidence against you, Marcus said. If anyone questions what he's doing to the company, he'll claim you were corrupt and he's just cleaning up your mess. We sat there trying to process the enormity of what we were facing. This wasn't just corporate maneuvering. This was a sophisticated operation to destroy a company and frame anyone who might fight back. How long until your ownership is public? Marcus asked. I hesitated, then decided to trust him. 4 days. His eyes widened. You bought the company? When? 2 days before Derek fired me. Martin sold me his controlling stake. Marcus started laughing, a slightly hysterical sound. Oh my God! Derek has no idea, does he? Not yet. But Marcus, his lawyers contacted Martin's office today asking about transactions before retirement. I think they suspect something. The clock is ticking faster than I thought. We spent another hour strategizing. Marcus agreed to help me investigate Derek's background more thoroughly. I needed evidence not just of what he planned to do at Hartwell, but of his pattern across multiple companies. That evening, Martin called again with worse news. Derek's lawyers sent a formal inquiry to my attorneys. They're asking detailed questions about any financial transactions I made in the 30 days before retirement. They're fishing, but they're persistent. Can they stop the ownership transfer? No. It's done, filed, legal, but they could try to challenge it if they found some procedural irregularity. My lawyers assure me there isn't one, but it would create chaos and delay everything. That night, I barely slept. I kept running scenarios, trying to figure out how to protect the company and the people who worked there. 215 employees, 215 families depending on Hartwell Solutions for their livelihoods. And Derek Hamilton was going to destroy all of it for $20 million. The next morning, I woke up with a plan. I couldn't tell everyone about my ownership yet, but I could start building my case and gathering allies. I reached out to the 7 board members who weren't involved in Derek's scheme. Helen Marsh had co-founded the company with Martin 30 years ago. Thomas Reed, Jennifer Cole, Raymond Santos, Susan Park, Peter Walsh, and Caroline Foster were all longtime board members with genuine investment in the company's success. I sent each of them a carefully worded email asking for a private meeting. I mentioned I had evidence of serious irregularities and potential fraud. I suggested meeting at a neutral location, a law office owned by a friend of Martin's. All 7 agreed within hours. We met that afternoon in a conference room with wood paneling and leather chairs. Helen sat at the head of the table, her white hair pulled back, her eyes sharp despite her 70 years. Gabriella, we're all shocked by what happened to you, she began. But your email mentioned fraud. That's a serious allegation. I laid out everything methodically. Patricia's note about selling the client list. Marcus' financial documents showing the bonus structure and the side agreement between Derek, Andrew, Donald, and Barbara. The email about Phase 1 terminations that had been accidentally sent to me. The pattern of Derek's previous companies collapsing after his involvement. I showed them printouts of news articles about 3 companies Derek had led. DataCore Systems, dissolved 18 months after he became CEO. Summit Technologies, sold to liquidators after 14 months. Precision Analytics, bankrupt within a year. In each case, I explained, Derek came in as CEO with promises of modernization. Key employees were fired quickly. Within months, the companies were sold or dissolved, and in each case, Derek walked away with millions in severance and bonuses, while hundreds of people lost their jobs. The room was silent as they absorbed this. Why wasn't this caught in his background check? Raymond asked. Because on paper, it looks like bad luck or market conditions, I said. The companies all had reasonable explanations for their failures, but the pattern is clear when you look at all of them together. This is what he does. Has a professional corporate vulture. Jennifer leaned forward. What do you want us to do? I need you to help me stop him. I need evidence that will hold up legally, and I need you to trust me for 3 more days. Why 3 days? Thomas asked. I hesitated. Martin had advised me not to reveal the ownership yet, to keep that card hidden until the perfect moment, but I needed these people on my side, because in 3 days, something changes that will give us leverage, I said carefully. I can't explain more yet, but I need you to trust me. Helen studied me for a long moment. Martin trusts you. That's enough for me. What do you need? I need you to call an emergency board meeting, the day after tomorrow. Don't tell Andrew, Donald, or Barbara. Don't tell Derek. Use your board authority to invoke an emergency session. We can do that, Peter said. But Derek will show up anyway, and hell bring those 3 with him. I know. That's what I'm counting on. Over the next 2 days, Marcus and I worked around the clock building our case. He contacted former employees from Derek's previous companies. We found a pattern of the same tactics: mass firings, false accusations against key personnel, rapid asset sales. Amy called me with regular updates from inside Hartwell. Derek had fired 8 more people in 2 days. He was bringing in his own team, people from his previous companies. Morale was at rock bottom. People were updating their resumes and looking for other jobs. The place feels like a funeral, Amy said. Everyone's just waiting to see who gets fired next. Then, the day before the emergency board meeting, a certified letter arrived at my apartment. It was from a law firm representing Derek Hamilton personally. They were suing me for breach of fiduciary duty and misappropriation of company resources. The lawsuit claimed I had been stealing from Hartwell Solutions for years through false vendor accounts and inflated expense reports. It was all fabricated, every word, but the documents looked official, professional, and detailed. They were requesting an emergency injunction to freeze my personal bank accounts pending investigation. The hearing was scheduled for 6 days away, the day after my ownership would become public. Derek was trying to destroy me financially and legally before I could reveal who I really was. I sat on my couch that evening, staring at the lawsuit papers, feeling the weight of everything crushing down on me. I had worked my entire adult life for this company. I had sacrificed relationships, personal time, health. I had given everything to build something meaningful, and now I was being painted as a criminal. I let myself cry for 10 minutes. Then I called Martin. "Did you see the lawsuit?" I asked. "My lawyers sent me a copy." "Gabriella, it's all lies. We can prove it. I know. But Martin, he's good at this. The documents look real. What if people believe him? Then we show them the truth." His voice was steady, firm. "You taught me something once. Do you remember? 3 years ago, when we lost the Jennings account because their VP lied about our services." I did remember. I had been devastated, convinced our reputation was ruined. "You told me," Martin continued, "that the best revenge is success, and the best defense is documentation. You spent 3 months building a case with emails, contracts, and phone logs. When you presented it to the Jennings board, their VP was fired and they gave us back the contract plus 3 new ones. This feels different. It's not. It's bigger. Yes, the stakes are higher. But the principle is the same. Document everything. Stay calm. Wait for your moment. After we hung up, I looked at the yellow tulips I had brought home from that terrible day. They were wilting now, brown at the edges, but they had lasted longer than I expected. I called the 7 honest board members. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Be there. Helen's voice was quiet but strong. Well, be there, Gabriella. All of us. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for 9 in the morning. That was also the day my ownership paperwork would be officially filed with the state and become public record. The timing would be perfect. I woke up at 5 a.m. on the day of the board meeting. I showered, dried my hair carefully, and put on my best navy blue suit, the one I wore to major client presentations. I wanted to look professional, composed, unshakable. I gathered my evidence folders. Everything was organized meticulously. Printed emails, financial documents, news articles, Patricia's handwritten note, timelines of Derek's previous companies, the lawsuit papers he had filed against me. I arrived at the Hartwell Solutions building at 8:30. The parking garage was mostly empty this early. I walked through the lobby carrying my leather folder, shoulders back, head high. Patricia, the receptionist, looked up and her face went pale. "Gabriella, what are you doing here?" "Derek will call security." I smiled at her. "Let him. I have a meeting, but you were fired." "I know. Thank you for your note, Patricia. It helped more than you know." I took the elevator to the executive floor. The building felt different now, charged with tension. I walked past my old office. Someone else's belongings were already on the desk. Crystal had moved in, apparently. The boardroom was at the end of the hall. Large windows overlooking downtown Denver. A long mahogany table that could seat 20. I had sat in that room hundreds of times over the years for quarterly reviews, strategy sessions, and planning meetings. Helen, Thomas, Jennifer, Raymond, Susan, Peter, and Caroline were already there. They looked nervous, but determined. Helen nodded at me as I entered. "Thank you for coming," I said. At 8:45, we heard voices in the hallway. Derek's voice, loud and angry. "What is this? Who authorized this meeting?" He burst through the door with Andrew Chen, Donald Westfield, and Barbara Preston right behind him. Derek stopped when he saw me. "What is she doing here? Get her out. She's been terminated." Helen stood up. Her voice was calm but carried authority. "I authorized this meeting, Derek. Gabriella is here at my invitation. Sit down or leave. Your choice." Derek's face went red, then purple. But he sat. He knew he couldn't challenge Helen's authority as a founding board member. Not directly. Andrew, Donald, and Barbara sat as well, looking uncomfortable. Crystal appeared in the doorway. "Should I stay, Mr. Hamilton?" "No. Close the door on your way out." The room felt electric. Derek leaned back in his chair, trying to look relaxed, but I could see tension in his shoulders. "This is highly irregular," he said. "I'm the CEO. Emergency meetings are supposed to be called through me. Company bylaws allow any 3 board members to call an emergency session." Thomas said. "We're well within our rights." "Fine. Then let's hear what's so urgent it couldn't wait for our regular meeting next week." I stood up and moved to the head of the table. "I have evidence of fraud, conspiracy, and intentional sabotage of this company." Derek laughed. It sounded genuine, amused. "This again? Gabriella, you're fired. You're facing a lawsuit for embezzlement, and now you're making wild accusations? This is sad. Let her present," Helen said sharply. I spent the next 20 minutes laying everything out. The Phase 1 terminations email, Patricia's note about the planned sale of the client list, Marcus' discovery of Derek's bonus structure, and the side deal with Andrew, Donald, and Barbara. The pattern of Derek's previous companies collapsing within months of his arrival. I showed documents, timelines, financial records. Andrew, Donald and Barbara shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some of the other board members looked shocked, angry, but Derek remained calm, too calm. When I finished, he stood up slowly and moved to the front of the room. That was quite a performance, Gabriella. Truly. But let me show you all what's really happening here. He pulled out his own folder and began distributing documents. These are bank records showing transactions between Hartwell Solutions accounts and a series of shell companies, all created by Gabriela Martinez over the past 18 months. I looked at the documents. They showed payments totaling over $300,000 to companies with names like Summit Consulting, LLC, and Precision Services Group. Vendor payments, apparently authorized by me. These are fabricated, I said immediately. They're time-stamped, signed, and documented. Derek countered. I found them during a routine audit of our financial systems. When I discovered the fraud, I had no choice but to terminate Gabriella immediately. He pulled out more documents. Here are emails between Gabriella and these shell companies discussing payment schedules and services rendered, services that were never actually provided. The emails looked real. My email address, my supposed signature, but I had never sent them. This is sophisticated forgery, I said, but my voice sounded weak even to me. Is it? Derek looked around the room. Or is this a desperate attempt by someone who got caught? Gabriella was fired. She's facing criminal charges. And now she's trying to destroy me to cover her own crimes. Andrew spoke up. This explains everything. She's trying to deflect attention from her own theft. Donald nodded. We should call the police right now. Barbara looked at me with what seemed like genuine sadness. I'm sorry, Gabriella. I really thought you were better than this. Some of the other board members looked uncertain now. Derek had created reasonable doubt, planted seeds of suspicion. His false evidence looked as real as my actual evidence. Gabriella has been with this company for 12 years, Helen said firmly. I don't believe for 1 second that she's a thief. Loyalty clouds judgment, Derek said smoothly. I understand it's hard to accept, but the evidence speaks for itself. I felt panic rising. This was spinning out of control. Derek had prepared for this. He had built an entire false narrative, complete with documents that looked official and authentic. Even some of the board members who had been on my side looked uncertain now. Then the conference room door opened. Patricia stood there, looking terrified but determined. Behind her was Martin Hartwell, and behind Martin was a woman in a dark business suit carrying a leather briefcase. I'm sorry to interrupt, Patricia said, her voice shaking slightly. But there's someone here with important documents to deliver. Derek's confidence faltered for just a second. This is a private board meeting. Get out. The woman stepped forward. My name is Catherine Rodriguez. I'm from the Colorado Secretary of State's office, Business Division. I have official filings that must be delivered today. She walked directly to me and opened her briefcase. Miss Martinez, the ownership transfer documents filed 1 week ago have completed processing as of 9 a.m. this morning. She handed me a leather folder. You are now officially registered as the majority shareholder of Hartwell Solutions, owning 53% of all outstanding shares. The room went absolutely silent. Catherine continued in her official voice. These documents confirm the legal transfer of ownership from Martin Hartwell to Gabriela Martinez, executed 8 days ago, filed with the state 7 days ago, and processed as of this morning. The transfer is complete, legal, and binding. Derek's face had gone white, then red, then a mottled purple. That's impossible, he said. His voice was strangled. That sale was never disclosed. There was no notification. Martin stepped into the room. It was legal, properly filed, and processed according to state requirements. Gabriella has owned the majority of this company since she signed the papers 8 days ago, 2 days before you fired her. I stood up, holding the official documents Catherine had given me. My hands were steady now. "Let me clarify something for everyone in this room," I said, looking directly at Derek. "The board doesn't work for you, Derek. The board works for the shareholders, and I'm the majority shareholder, which means you work for me." I paused. "Or rather, you did." Derek tried to speak, but no words came out. I continued, my voice growing stronger. "As majority owner of Hartwell Solutions, I'm exercising my right to terminate your employment as CEO, effective immediately. The grounds are conspiracy to commit fraud, intentional sabotage of the company, defamation of character, and breach of fiduciary duty. You can't do this." Derek finally found his voice. "I have a contract. Your contract includes a morality clause," I said. "You've violated it in multiple ways. You'll receive no severance, no bonus, and you'll be pursuing legal action to recover damages." Helen stood up. "I support this action. Derek Hamilton is terminated effective immediately." The other honest board members voiced their agreement. Even some who had looked uncertain moments before were nodding. Derek looked around wildly, then focused on Andrew, Donald, and Barbara. "Say something. Stop this." But the three of them knew they were cornered. I turned to them next. "Andrew, Donald, Barbara, you three have a choice. Resign from this board today, divest your shares, and walk away quietly. Or I pursue legal action for conspiracy and breach of fiduciary duty. The evidence Marcus and I have compiled will bury you in court for years." I pulled out copies of the documents showing their side deal with Derek. "You have 1 hour to decide." There was a knock on the door. 2 security guards, Frank and David, entered. "You called for us, Miss Marsh?" Frank asked Helen. "Yes. Please escort Mr. Hamilton from the building." "Has been terminated." Derek made one last attempt. "You can't do this. I have a contract. I'll sue for wrongful termination." "Your contract has a morality clause," I repeated. "You violated it. You'll get nothing, Derek. Nothing." As Frank and David moved toward him, Derek's composure finally shattered completely. "You think you've won?" he shouted at me. "You think this is over? I'll destroy you. I'll destroy this company. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Get him out," Helen said quietly. They escorted Derek toward the door. He was still shouting, making threats, cursing. Crystal appeared in the hallway, saw what was happening, and tried to slip away. "Crystal," I called out. "You're terminated as well. Effective immediately. Please collect your belongings and leave the building within the hour." The room felt different as Derek's shouting faded down the hallway, lighter, like a poison had been drawn out. Andrew stood up suddenly. "I resign. We resign." He looked at Donald and Barbara, who nodded miserably. "Well, divest our shares and go quietly." "Smart choice," Martin said. "My lawyers will send you the paperwork." After they filed out, I sat down heavily. My legs were shaking. Helen came over and put a hand on my shoulder. "That," she said, "was the most dramatic board meeting in 30 years. Well done." I looked around at the remaining board members. "I know this is shocking. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you sooner." "Don't apologize," Jennifer said. "You saved this company. You saved all of us." Within an hour, news spread through the entire company. I could see people gathering in clusters, talking in hushed voices, checking their phones as emails and texts flew around. I knew I needed to address everyone directly. I asked Helen to help me call an all-staff meeting for 2 that afternoon in the main conference center downstairs. But first, there was something I had to do. I spent the rest of the morning personally calling every single person Derek had fired. 15 names on my list. 15 phone calls I needed to make. The first call was to Marcus. "Marcus, this is Gabriella. I have an offer for you." I saw the emails flying around. "What happened?" I explained everything. When I finished, there was a long silence. "So, you've owned the company this whole time?" Marcus started laughing. "Oh my God. Derek never knew, did he?" He fired the owner. "I want you to come back. Chief Financial Officer, same position, same salary, plus the back pay for the days you missed. And Marcus, I'm giving you a seat on the board. Gabriella, I don't know what to say." "Say yes." He did. I made 14 more calls. Some were easy, joyful reunions. Some were harder. People had been hurt, humiliated. 2 people were crying when I called. 3 were angry, understandably so. By noon, 12 of the 15 had agreed to return. 3 had already accepted other positions and felt they couldn't back out. I understood and respected that. I offered them generous severance bonuses to thank them for their years of service and to compensate for what Derek had put them through. At 2 p.m., I stood in the main conference center looking out at 215 faces. Some looked hopeful, some looked terrified, all looked confused. Helen introduced me. "I know you've all heard rumors this morning. Let me give you the facts. Martin Hartwell sold his majority stake in this company to Gabriela Martinez 8 days ago. She has owned 53% of Hartwell Solutions since then. This morning, she terminated Derek Hamilton as CEO for cause. I'll let Gabriela explain the rest." I took a deep breath and began. "I'm not going to sugarcoat what happened. Derek Hamilton was hired as CEO through proper channels. The board, including me at that time, thought we were getting an experienced leader. What we actually got was a corporate raider who planned to destroy this company for personal profit. I explained Derek's pattern at previous companies. I told them about the bonus structure that would have paid him $8 million if he sold us to liquidators. I described the conspiracy with the 3 board members. Derek's plan was to fire key employees, tank our value, and sell us to a liquidation firm. Within 6 months, Hartwell Solutions would have ceased to exist. Every one of you would have lost your jobs. People were leaning forward now, fully engaged. But he made one critical mistake. 2 days before he fired me, I became the majority owner of this company. He didn't know that when he terminated me and 14 others. He didn't know it when he met with clients and lied about me. He didn't know it when he started his plan to dismantle everything Martin built over 40 years. I paused, looking around at familiar faces. People I had worked with for years. People whose children I knew, whose struggles and triumphs I had celebrated. Everyone Derek fired has been invited back with back pay and a formal apology. Most have accepted. Our 3 board members who conspired with Derek have resigned. We're restructuring the board with people who actually care about this company's future. Someone in the back started clapping. Then someone else. Within seconds, the entire room was applauding. Some people were crying. Amy was openly sobbing. I held up my hand for quiet, but we're not out of danger yet. Derek did real damage in just a few days. He lied to Hanover Financial, our biggest client. He frightened away potential new business. He created mistrust and fear. We have a lot of work to do to rebuild. Over the next week, I barely slept. I met personally with every major client to explain what had happened and assure them of our stability. I reached out to Hanover Financial specifically. Patricia Hanover, their CEO, took my call immediately. "Gabriella, thank God. Derek told us you embezzled from the company. We were devastated. It was all lies, Patricia. Every word." I spent an hour explaining everything. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "I wish you had called us immediately when he said that." "I know. I was trying to handle it quietly, to avoid scandal. That was a mistake." "Well, you handled it now. And Gabriella, I'm not just restoring our contract. I'm increasing it by 30%. You earned that, and you deserve our trust." Similar conversations happened with other clients. Some were understanding. A few were angry we hadn't told them sooner. But slowly, steadily, we rebuilt those relationships. 2 weeks after Derek's firing, I got a surprise visitor. A man in a dark suit with a federal badge introduced himself as Agent Cooper from the FBI's Corporate Fraud Division. I tensed immediately, assuming Derek had filed false charges. "Miss Martinez, you're not in any trouble," Agent Cooper said quickly. "Quite the opposite. We've been investigating Derek Hamilton and a network of similar operators for 18 months. Your documentation just gave us everything we needed to move forward with indictments." He explained that Derek was part of a larger pattern. 6 different people, all following the same playbook. Get hired as CEO, gut the company, facilitate a sale to liquidators, walk away rich. They had destroyed 43 companies and eliminated over 6,000 jobs across 8 states. "We had pieces of the puzzle," Agent Cooper said, "but WED never caught them before they destroyed the target company. Your evidence, combined with your willingness to cooperate, changes everything. We're seeking indictments against Derek Hamilton and 7 co-conspirators. Will I have to testify? Probably. Are you willing?" I thought about all those destroyed companies, 6,000 people who lost their jobs. Absolutely. Within a month, Derek Hamilton, Andrew Chen, Donald Westfield, Barbara Preston, and 7 others were indicted on federal charges, including conspiracy to commit fraud, wire fraud, and racketeering. Derek's fancy lawyers tried to negotiate, even attempting to use his false embezzlement claims against me as leverage. But Martin's legal team had documented everything meticulously. The false vendor accounts Derek created were traced back to his assistant Crystal. The fake emails were shown to be forgeries. Every piece of his fabricated evidence fell apart under scrutiny. Derek ended up facing an additional charge of obstruction of justice for the false evidence. His lawyers told him he was looking at 10 to 15 years in federal prison. At Hartwell Solutions, things slowly returned to normal, and then became better than normal. Word spread in the industry about what had happened. About a CEO who tried to destroy a company, and the employee-turned-owner who stopped him. 3 new major clients reached out within 2 months, specifically because they had heard about our integrity. Our revenue grew by 35% in the first quarter under my leadership. I restructured the board. Marcus joined as CFO and board member. Amy, who had shown incredible courage during the crisis, was promoted to Chief Technology Officer and also given a board seat. Patricia, the receptionist, retired with a generous pension, and at her retirement party, I publicly thanked her for the note that had helped save the company. Helen Marsh remained as board chair, providing wisdom and experience. The new board was smaller, leaner, and completely aligned with protecting the company's values. I implemented profit sharing for all employees. If the company did well, everyone would benefit, not just executives and shareholders. 6 months after that terrible day when Derek fired me, I was having coffee with Amy when she said something that stuck with me. "You know what I keep thinking about? That moment in the hallway when he fired you, and you just said good luck and smiled. How did you stay so calm?" I wasn't calm inside, I admitted. I was terrified and furious, but I had information Derek didn't have. I knew I just had to wait for the right moment. It must have been so hard, keeping that secret. The hardest thing I've ever done. There were moments I wanted to scream at him, to tell him exactly who I was, but I had to be strategic. I had to let him show his hand first. Amy shook her head in admiration. "I hope I'm that strong if I ever face something like that." "You were strong, Amy. You called me with information when you were scared for your own job. That took courage." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment. "What happened to Derek's assistant, Crystal?" Amy asked. "She's facing charges too. She helped create the false evidence against me. She's cooperating with prosecutors in exchange for a reduced sentence." Another month passed. Martin officially retired, for real this time. We threw him a huge party. The entire company showed up. Clients flew in from across the country. Martin gave a speech that made me cry. 40 years ago, I started this company with nothing but an idea and determination. I built something I'm proud of. But Gabriella didn't just save what I built. She made it better. She showed me that true leadership isn't about holding power. It's about protecting people, standing up for what's right, and having the courage to fight even when you're terrified. He looked directly at me. I gave her an opportunity, but she gave all of you your futures back. That's the difference between building something and protecting something. Both matter, but protection requires a different kind of strength. 1 year. It had been exactly 1 year since I signed those papers in Martin's lawyer's office, becoming the majority owner of Hartwell Solutions without knowing the storm I was about to face. The company threw an anniversary celebration, not for Derek's firing, though people joked about making that a holiday, but for the day I officially became owner and for the journey we had all taken together. I stood in front of the entire company again, this time in a rented event space with catering and music. People were relaxed, happy, laughing. It felt like a completely different world from that tense all-staff meeting a year ago. A year ago today. I became the official owner of this company. 2 days before that, our then-new CEO fired me in a hallway while I held yellow tulips from my grandmother's birthday lunch. Some people laughed. It felt safe to laugh now. I want to talk about that moment because I've thought about it a lot. Derek was trying to humiliate me. He wanted to make an example of me, to scare everyone else into submission, and for about 10 seconds, it worked. I felt humiliated, scared, angry. The room was quiet now, everyone listening. But then I remembered something. I remembered that I knew something he didn't. I had information, power, ownership that he couldn't see, and I realized that some battles aren't won by immediate reaction. Some battles require patience, strategy, and faith in yourself. I paused, looking around at familiar faces. For 12 years before that day, I worked hard. I kept my head down. I was loyal and dedicated. I thought that was enough. But I learned something crucial during this experience. You have to value yourself enough to fight for what's right. You have to be willing to stand up, even when it's terrifying. I shared updates on everyone who had been involved in the crisis. Marcus was engaged now to a wonderful woman named Diana he had met at a charity event the company organized. Amy's new software platform had been featured in 3 national tech publications and was gaining serious attention from major industry players. Patricia was traveling through Europe with her sister, sending postcards that we hung in the break room. Helen had published an article about corporate governance and ethics that was being used as a teaching tool in business schools across the country. And Derek Hamilton, I said carefully, is serving a 12-year sentence in federal prison. 6 other people in his network are also in prison. The FBI estimates we helped prevent the destruction of at least 15 other companies that were being targeted. I didn't celebrate Derek's imprisonment. That felt wrong somehow, petty. But I acknowledged it as justice being served. I want to talk about those yellow tulips, I continued. I kept them on my desk until they died. Then I got new ones. I've had fresh yellow tulips in my office every single week for the past year. I pulled out a small photo and projected it on the screen behind me. It was the bouquet from that day, wilted and brown at the edges, but still recognizable. I took this picture before I threw them out. I keep it as a reminder of the moment I chose patience over panic. The moment I held on to something beautiful while someone tried to destroy me. The moment I smiled and said good luck instead of giving him the angry reaction he wanted. The room was completely silent now. Those tulips represent something important. They represent the choice to be strategic instead of reactive, to value timing over immediate satisfaction, to hold on to beauty and hope even when everything feels terrible. I took a breath, feeling emotion rising. I learned 3 profound truths through this experience, and I want to share them with all of you because they apply to more than just corporate crises. They apply to life. First truth. Your value isn't determined by someone else's opinion of you. Derek fired me and called me incompetent. He spread lies about me being a criminal. He tried to make me believe I was worthless, but I knew my worth. I knew what I had contributed for 12 years, and that knowledge saved everything. When someone treats you badly, it says everything about them and nothing about you. Second truth. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is wait. Not because you're weak or afraid, but because you're strategic. Patience isn't passive. Patience is powerful. If I had confronted Derek immediately in that hallway, if I had shouted or argued or revealed my ownership right then, he could have prepared a defense. He could have found lawyers to challenge the sale. He could have created even more chaos. By waiting, by letting him show his full plan, I gathered all the evidence I needed to stop him completely. Third truth. Justice isn't always loud or immediate, but if you document the truth, stand firm in your integrity, and wait for your moment, justice will come. It might not come as fast as you want. It might require patience and faith, but it will come. I looked around at faces I had known for years and new faces that had joined in the past months. I didn't win because I was lucky. I didn't win because of some miracle. I won because I knew who I was, what I stood for, and I refused to let someone else's cruelty define my story. Each of you has that same power. When someone tries to diminish you, remember your worth. When someone tries to rush you into a reaction, remember the power of strategic patience. When injustice happens, document everything and wait for your moment. The room erupted in applause. Amy was crying again, but smiling. Marcus was standing and clapping. Helen had tears running down her face. After the celebration wound down, I returned to my office. On my desk was a new bouquet of yellow tulips with a note from the entire leadership team for teaching us that the quietest moments can be the most powerful. I sat down and looked out my window at the Denver skyline. The city lights were just starting to come on as dusk settled. I thought about the woman I had been a year ago, nervous and uncertain, signing papers that would change her entire life. I thought about the woman I had become, strong enough to face down a corporate predator and save 215 jobs. My phone rang. A potential new client from Seattle wanting to discuss a partnership. I picked up with confidence. "This is Gabriela Martinez. How can I help you?" As I started the conversation, I realized that I felt completely different than I had a year ago. Not just professionally, but personally. I had learned that I was capable of more than I ever imagined. That quiet strength could be more powerful than loud anger. That patience could be a weapon as effective as any aggressive attack. The yellow tulips on my desk caught the last rays of sunlight coming through the window. They were fresh, bright, alive. Not shaking in my hands this time, just sitting there, beautiful and calm, reminding me of the moment I chose wisdom over rage and patience over panic. And I smiled. "Before I go, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been in a situation where someone tried to diminish you or take away something you worked hard for? How did you respond? Did you react immediately, or did you take time to think strategically? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Your experiences might help someone else who's facing a difficult situation right now. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think about your own experiences with injustice or standing up for yourself, please hit that like button. It helps more people find stories like this. Stories about real struggles and real victories. And if you want to hear more stories about people who faced impossible situations and found the strength to fight back, please subscribe to this channel. I share new stories every week about courage, justice, and the quiet power of knowing your worth. Finally, if you know someone who needs to hear this message today, someone who's struggling with a difficult situation at work or in their personal life, please share this story with them. Sometimes we all need a reminder that we're stronger than we think, and that patience and integrity really do win in the end. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for taking this journey with me. I hope it reminded you of your own strength, your own worth, and your own power to create justice in your life. Remember, hold on to your tulips, wait for your moment, and never let anyone else define your worth. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next story.